pregnancy and adopting are two different processes that end up having the same result, but they can often be just as emotional as the other. When this couple who desperately wanted children struggled to conceive, they turned to adoption. However, it wasn't long before the doctor called them with some news that would change their life forever. Keep watching to the end to find out what happened. The more the merrier. When this couple from Oklahoma first got married, things were great. It was only natural for them to want to express their love differently. They wanted nothing more than to be parents. Despite all of their efforts, Sarah and Andy Justice felt as if having a family of their own just wasn't in the cards. After 2 years of failed conception, they went to a fertility expert, looking for some help with their situation. Their meeting with the specialist did not turn out to be as useful as they hoped. They were offered to undergo in vitro fertilization since they were eligible. Although this was an option for them, the cost of the treatment was too high for only a 10% success rate. So Sarah and Andy finally turned to adoption. The adoption process can sometimes take several years, since it involves a lot of interviewing and paperwork. Even though the couple struggled to have children, they still craved the experience of raising a newborn baby. Adoption of a baby can be emotionally intense, as it is common for a mother to quickly decide to keep her child anyway, just after giving birth. Unfortunately, this happened to Sarah and Andy twice. However, they still clung on to the hope that they would one day have a family. Fortunately, an opportunity came knocking on their front door. Just when everything seemed to be going really bad, they received a phone call. It was an expectant mother, and she had approved them as the adoptive parents. This pregnancy was a little different from the previous mothers. In fact, after an ultrasound, the expectant mother discovered she was pregnant with 3 kids. This may seem like a daunting task for anybody else, but the Justices were more than ready for the challenge. Even though their original plan was to adopt 1 child, they actually wanted more. The adoption process had proved difficult, so adopting several children at once actually fit their wish perfectly. In 2013, during the month of May, Hannah, Joel, and Elizabeth were welcomed to the world. They were born slightly premature, so they had to be put in intensive care. But when they were ready to be discharged, their new parents would wait for them. The Justices were happy. They finally had the family they'd wanted for so long. Nevertheless, stress had been affecting Sarah, so she booked an appointment with the doctor for a checkup. The triplets were coming home soon, and she wanted to be in top shape. What first seemed like a normal checkup ended up becoming a life-changing event. Nothing could have prepared her for what the doctor discovered. She was pregnant! In fact, she was pregnant with twins! At first, she couldn't believe it. It was a miracle. Eventually, Andrew and Abigail were born, and the Justice family was more than complete. The Justices couldn't help but find their situation funny. For several years, they longed for children, and they finally got them. But they didn't expect to raise 5 newborn babies all at once. However, the loving couple didn't stop there, because they welcomed their 6th child in January 2016. Life really turned around for Sarah and Andy. Raising multiple kids at the same time is a challenging task, but for many people, parenthood is a dream come true. Is having multiple children at once something you'd think you'd be able to handle? I think Sarah and Andy's story is an impressive one. Children deserve love no matter what. Amy and James Cooper are a British couple who are equally happy to have either biological or adopted children. Their decision to adopt before attempting to conceive naturally was because having biological children never was a priority for them. Amy explains that she has enough space in her heart to love all of her children equally. In fact, ever since Amy was a child, she liked the idea of adoption. Amy looked back at how she felt when she was younger and said, "I remember feeling drawn to it, immediately feeling that this made sense and that bringing a child into my life in this way would be perfectly achievable." When the Coopers talked about having children, both of them were on board with adopting first. They acknowledged the difficulty of the adoption process and thought it would be easier to adopt without having children at home to consider on top of it. Barely 1 year into their marriage, and the Coopers jumped into the adoption process. As expected, the couple had faced some issues along the way. specifically regarding paperwork and some of the professionals involved. Nevertheless, Amy found the experience to be an overall rewarding one. "It was a thorough process, which I loved," she said. The couple adopted siblings, a boy and a girl, whose mother couldn't offer the stability needed to raise children. The family is very happy now. Amy and James have considered having biological children, but they will only do so if it is in the best interests of their current kids. In their eyes, all children are valuable and deserve to be loved regardless of whether they were adopted or biological. No such thing as too many. Just like Sarah and Andy, this family story is definitely one for the history books. When a Texan family tested out foster care with just one child, it turned out that the boy had several siblings. In the end, the couple ended up adopting them all. Andy and Thomas Bonura loved the idea of being parents and were fortunate enough to be blessed with 3 biological kids: Joey, Sadie, and Daphne. Because the doctors had said that they couldn't have any kids after the birth of their first son, it was a miracle. They were able to have 2 daughters after. The doctor's warning became even more serious, so Andy and Thomas decided they would stop attempting to conceive naturally. Nevertheless, they still felt as if there was room in their family for more children. In 2017, the couple turned to fostering, since adoption was absolutely on their table. The first child they fostered was an instant success story. The baby boy, named Bryson, left such a good impression on the Bonuras, they adopted him not long after. This was only the first step in their adoption journey. It turned out that Bryson also had 4 older siblings who were also in foster care. After finding out about them, Andy and Thomas opened their doors to each sibling, taking the opportunity to foster each one. The first one after Bryson was a 4-year-old girl named Gabrielle. Then they welcomed a 6-year-old David. Finally, the eldest brothers were a pair of 8-year-old twins, Thomas and Carter. The siblings loved Andy and Thomas and would ask them if they could come live with them. Eventually, the couple adopted all 5 siblings. Andy claims the addition to their family is fun and free of arguments. "Our family is complete," she said. A single man with the biggest heart. Barry Farmer's childhood was far from easy since he grew up in foster care. His situation was a little different from the usual foster care system. Because his parents were unable to care for him, he grew up with his grandmother. She cared for him while he was still young, and it was something he would be forever grateful for. This experience is exactly what motivated him to adopt when he grew older. Barry explained how he felt. "Becoming a foster parent was like a tribute to my grandmother because I could never pay her back, but I was definitely able to pay it forward." At the age of 21 years old, Barry could not be more excited to have received his foster care license. When he fostered 8-year-old Jackson, it was with the intention of simply caring for the boy until his family could take him back. However, with lots of quality time spent together, it was inevitable that the 2 of them would end up becoming really close. Their connection was so special that Jackson could not forget about Barry, even when he was living with potential adoptive parents. He went back to his foster dad so he could ask him an important question. He wanted to know if Barry could be his father forever. Not long after, he adopted Jackson. The single dad thought the next best step forward would be expanding the family. So a couple of years later, Barry adopted an 11-year-old called Xavier and a 4-year-old Jeremiah. All of the boys appreciate their adoptive father, and luckily, they all get along with each other. "Fatherhood has been everything I imagined it to be because I'm the father I wish I had growing up," said Barry. He never takes his responsibility for granted, and he encourages other people to adopt, to reach out a helping hand and to have an open heart. A deep, unconditional love. All of these touching stories have shown how much love people can have for children. But isn't it also touching to see children open up their hearts to others? Shelley and Hal White ended up adopting a 4-year-old Chinese baby after their eldest daughter first suggested it to them. They already had several children to care for, and the couple was struggling with money. However, the value of someone's life is priceless. Their daughter, Ryan Elizabeth, would offer her piggy bank to her parents and say, "We have room in our hearts." So the family took Maya in. Although little Maya was diagnosed with cancer, due to her adoption by the White family, she was finally able to get the treatment she needed. Maya is always happy to be around her siblings, and all of them are said to be laughing and smiling non-stop. This miracle recovery was all kickstarted by a little girl who encouraged her parents to act on love. It's a great thing that so many people who really wanted children were lucky enough to get them, but also the kids who have found a home with such loving people are quite fortunate. If you felt touched by any of these stories, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. I hope to see you in the next video.